Brexit is like nuclear power. Everyone has an opinion about it, but almost nobody knows how it really works. To many, Brexit means the UK isolating themselves from the rest of the world, but Brexit supporters think the exact opposite, that Brexit means globalization and open markets on steroids. Check this out.
Boris Johnson is planning to turn UK into Singapore on Thames after Brexit.
In 2019, the phrase Singapore on Thames became a sort of mantra for many Brexiteers. As you know, Singapore is one of the main hubs for international trade. They have free market deals with nearly everyone, and their laws have attracted thousands of companies. According to Boris Johnson, the European Union is blocking the UK from becoming as free and as open as Singapore is. And there is some truth to this. No, I haven't gone nuts. Think about it for a moment. The EU is the biggest free market area in the world. Thanks to this, there are 28 countries that can trade with each other. And yes, it is true that the EU has very few tariffs when it comes to foreign trade. But it's also true that for years, Brussels has been cheating in the international free trade market.
EU sues Colombia at WTO over fries.
Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about French fries. Europe has been selling French fries to Colombia for years. So far, so good. The EU and Colombia have a free trade agreement, so everybody is happy. So, what's the problem? The problem comes when Brussels heavily subsidizes European farmers. Thanks to CAP grants, producers can sell under market price to the Colombians. Add to this the EU food regulations, which tend to be stricter than elsewhere, and you can understand why Colombian farmers can hardly compete with European ones. Many of you might think that the French fry is a stupid example, but we can find the same issue in a much, much bigger industry. The battle between the American Boeing and the European Airbus. It follows the very same principle. And here we're talking about something much more serious than just some chips.
US imposes record $7.5 billion tariffs on European goods.
In other words, the United Kingdom wants to stay away from all these trade wars. In order to do that, Johnson's post-Brexit plan would be to sign free trade deals with anyone. Deals that would allow the UK to trade with the whole world without restrictions. All of this, it sounds beautiful, but there's a bit of another problem here. Time. Negotiating a trade deal between two countries can take years. So the UK will need more than a decade to see the Singaporean dream come true, if it ever does, and, well, what would happen in the meantime is a big question. The UK, it would have to trade with the world according to the World Trade Organization rules, which are not that convenient. So, if you're watching this video from Brexit lands, then you'd better get ready for lots and lots of tariffs while your government negotiates something a bit better. Or maybe not. What if there was an easy, quick, and handy solution to all of this? Well, yes, Boris Johnson has a not-so-secret plan to have free trade without negotiations. I'm talking about this.
Damn.
Boris Johnson widens push for Singapore-style free ports in UK.
Exactly. The so-called supercharged free ports. These ports would work as islands of free trade in the middle of the UK. Here is an example. Imagine that we have a Colombian ship full of potatoes and we want to sell those potatoes in the UK. Let's assume that the tariff would be 30%. But now, imagine that instead of loading your merch in, say, Liverpool, you do it in a supercharged free port in the Port of Tyne near Newcastle. Initially, you pay no tariff. Very close to the port, there is a factory that can process these potatoes, cut them into chips, freeze them, and put them into bags. And this factory is built on special free port land. So far, you haven't paid any tariff whatsoever. Besides, the taxes here are very low and there is freedom of movement. There's no border control, no customs checks, nothing. Then, once we have the frozen French fries, we sell them to the UK market. This is when you have to cross the border that limits the area of the supercharged free port. However, you are now already in the UK when you have to pay the tariffs. But hey, good news, unlike raw potatoes, frozen fries have only a 10% tariff. So now the Colombians have paid less tariffs, you've secured some jobs, and you've bypassed a lot of trade restrictions. It all sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? I mean, it just sounds like a great idea. Then, well, why didn't the UK do it before? Why does the UK need to be out of the European Union in order to do this? Well, today we're going to answer all of those questions, but before we do, let's take a look back at the history.
Thatcher's legacy.
If you ever travel to London, there is a place you can't miss. Canary Wharf. It's one of the most modern neighborhoods in the town, with a whole lot of skyscrapers and even a funicular. Canary Wharf is one of the world's financial hubs, and this is surprising given that the area in the 1970s was extremely poor. Back then, this region had a port, the Isle of Dogs port, and they had a big problem. During the 70s, merchant ships started getting bigger and bigger. Indeed, eventually they couldn't fit into the Isle of Dogs port. So, year after year, they had less and less traffic. In the 70s, this area was marginalized, but things changed in 1982. Back then, the British Prime Minister was the woman you see on the screen now, Margaret Thatcher. Thatcher was a big fan of businesses. So in order to restore this neighborhood, she had an idea. She turned it into a so-called enterprise zone. Basically, this area would have lower taxes and much more flexible urban laws. Besides, the government would make sure it was well connected with public transport and roads. All of this was enough to convince a lot of developers to come here and build office buildings, and today Canary Wharf is a skyscraper forest. It makes lots of money and employs thousands of highly skilled workers. In other words, the experience was good. So good that Thatcher repeated it over and over again. During the 80s, the United Kingdom started opening more and more enterprise zones with lower taxes. If this wasn't enough, they also gave licenses to some ports to become free ports with no tariffs whatsoever. This is how Nissan opens their Newcastle factory near the Port of Tyne that employs 7,000 people. So what's the problem? Well, these two great examples I just gave you are some of the few that really worked out. In most cases, the special economic zones didn't generate as much growth as Thatcher thought. According to many studies, 40% of the new jobs they created were just relocated ones. This means instead of brand new companies and brand new jobs being created, businesses from other areas moved into the enterprise zones. So the net result was actually zero. But beyond this, the government had to spend lots of money on infrastructure to make the enterprise zones really attractive to businesses. Just to give you an example, Canary Wharf has its own airport, London Central. So basically, for each job that was created with this policy, the government spent £17,000. In 2012, the United Kingdom stopped giving licenses to these zones. No more tax breaks, no more tariff-free ports. So now you might wonder, if the idea was so bad, why do they want to do it again? Why are they so excited about it? Well, let's have a look.
Hard Brexit therapy.
While the UK lost its faith in these special economic zones, the European Union did the... You might not know, but today Europe has more than 80 special economic zones with lower taxes and lower or no tariffs. For example, if your Colombian friends want to unload their French fries in the port of Cadiz in southern Spain, they would pay no tariff. They can then store those tasty fries in the port for as long as they want. Of course, as soon as they want to sell it in Spanish territory, they cross a beautiful border with some customs checks and they pay the tariff. But if they just store the fries because eventually they want to send it to, say, Morocco, they pay no tariff whatsoever to Spain. So now you might wonder, if this is already happening in Europe, why does Boris Johnson need Brexit to do it? Well, here's the reason.
The Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, passed in 2007, is one of two primary treaties of the European Union.
So what does this treaty say? Among many other things, it says that these special economic zones can be created for two purposes. One, helping a poor region to develop, or two, boosting a specific type of industry like green energy or something like that. All of this explains why most of these 80 zones are placed in Eastern Europe. Croatia has 11 free zones, while Austria and the UK have none. And this makes sense because the wealthiest Croatian region has 11,400 euros of GDP per capita. Meanwhile, the Newcastle area, one of the poorest regions of the UK, has 35,000 euros of GDP per capita. I think it's pretty clear who needs the most help, right? So yes and no. Of course, from an EU perspective, the UK does not need special economic zones, but if we look at it from a British perspective, we can see how there are big differences between regions. Western Inner London has a GDP per capita of 191,000 euros. So, as you can see, compared with London, the northern regions are much poorer, and economics is sometimes a matter of comparison. In fact, these poorer regions are where Brexit is so popular, and all of this explains why, in this area of the country, this free port idea sounds like heaven to many.
Port of Tyne wants virtual free ports stretching to Nissan factory in Newcastle.
But the question remains the same. Special economic zones didn't do marvels in the 80s, so why would they do marvels now? And this is when we get to the idea of the supercharged free ports. Basically, in the 80s, we had two types of special economic zones: enterprise zones with some tax breaks and free ports with no tariffs. Imagine what would happen if we merged these two things into one. What do we have? We have a place with freedom of movement, low taxes, flexible urban regulations, and no tariffs. Boom. All of a sudden, we can make the story of the Colombian French fry maker possible. They come with their raw ingredients, they unload it, they process it, and they sell it with lower tariffs. In the meantime, we have created companies, factories, and jobs for lots of people in the poorest areas of the country. It sounds pretty good, and in the north, it sounds really good.
Freeport's plan for North could give UK £9 billion boost.
According to a consultancy named the Mace Group, filling Northern England with these supercharged free ports would create over 150,000 jobs. As you can imagine, the port associations in the country are enthusiastic about this idea. Conservatives are happy too, and Labour is pretty divided. On the national level, they say this.
Boris Johnson's free ports are for the super rich to dodge taxes and launder money.
Nevertheless, the Northern English Labour MPs aren't as clear. Just look at what Mike Hill, an MP from Manchester, says.
Mike Hill, for jobs in northern coastal towns, create supercharged free ports.
So now the question is, are we really talking about the last resort for post-Brexit UK? Can these free ports really work? So far, it looks as though they have more advantages than disadvantages, but we're not talking about a game changer at all. Can they create jobs? Of course they can. Definitely in Newcastle, where the Nissan factory is based, they could be a great incentive for other car manufacturers to set up assembly plants. They could also import the cars piece by piece and then put them together in the UK. This could provide some jobs, but not really highly skilled ones. At the end of the day, assembly is one of the cheapest parts of the value chain of a product. But anyway, we're just making predictions, and that's not our job. So now the question goes over to you. Do you think these supercharged free ports are going to turn the UK into a Singapore on Thames? Would this make up for the losses of a hard Brexit? Please leave your answer in the comment section below. And before finishing this video, I'd like to thank Adrianople Group for helping us with the research on this one. They're a political intelligence company specializing in special economic zones. They've given us lots of insights, and we just want to thank them. It's not a sponsor, just a simple thank you. Also, please do visit reconsidermedia.com, the podcast that provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, don't forget we publish brand new videos just like this one every week, so do subscribe to VisualPolitik and hit that bell button so you don't miss any of our posts. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and as always, I'll see you next time.
If you want to learn more about politics and world affairs and hear some more of my lovely voice, come check out the Reconsider podcast, where we don't do the thinking for you. Find Reconsider at www.reconsidermedia.com or on Apple or Google Play or your favorite podcatcher.